Hey guys, tonight we dive into the shadowy corners of history, where the past whispers secrets that might just lull you into a peaceful slumber, or keep you up pondering how far we've come. Imagine yourself stumbling through a fog-shrouded village at dawn, the chills seeping into your bones like an unwelcome guest, while distant bells toll like a grim reminder that survival here is no guarantee. The truth, you probably wouldn't make it past breakfast in this unforgiving era, let alone thrive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir awake in the dim haze of 1325, your eyelids heavy as if glued shut by the night's chill. The first thing that hits you is the scratchy prickle against your skin, not from a cozy comforter, but from a lumpy pile of straw that's more insect hotel than mattress. Fleas hop merrily across your arms, tiny invaders treating your body like their personal playground, while the air hangs thick with a musty odor that could curdle milk. This isn't some romanticized fairy tale. It's the raw grind of medieval Europe, where even waking up feels like a minor victory. You shift slightly, and the straw crackles under you, releasing a puff of dust that makes your nose twitch. No alarm clock beeps here, just the distant clang of a church bell, echoing like a bossy neighbor who's already judging you for sleeping in. Your bed is a far cry from anything plush. It's a sack of dried grasses and whatever scraps the animals left behind, bundled into a corner of your one-room hut. Historians note that medieval peasants often shared these spaces with livestock for warmth, a mainstream fact that explains why your goat is eyeing you curiously from across the dirt floor. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some folks back then believed sleeping on straw infused with herbs like lavender could ward off evil spirits, though clearly it did nothing for the bugs, as another flea bites your ankle, making you yelp softly. You scratch at it, wondering if modern bug spray would be considered witchcraft here. The blanket draped over you, a coarse wool thing that's seen better days, stiff with grime and weighing down like a guilty conscience. No washing machines in sight, so it's been months since it last saw water, and it smells suspiciously like the barn it came from. As you sit up, your joints protest with a symphony of creaks, like an old wooden cart rolling over stones. You're only in your early 20s, but in this time, that's practically over the hill. Life expectancy hovers around 35, dragged down by everything from poor nutrition to rampant disease. The Black Death hasn't hit yet, but smaller plagues lurk, and you feel a twinge in your back that hints at the hard labor ahead. Historians still argue whether the average peasant's diet contributed more to early aging than the constant toil, with some pointing to records of skeletal remains showing arthritis in folks barely out of their teens. You glance around the hut, walls of wattle and daub, basically sticks slathered in mud, letting in drafts that whisper through the cracks. No windows to speak of, just slits covered with oiled cloth that barely keep out the rain. The floor, a packed earth affair, damp from last night's drizzle, squelching under your bare feet as you swing them down. You step cautiously, avoiding the puddle where the roof leaked again. Thatch isn't exactly waterproof, and repairing it means climbing up there yourself, risking a tumble that could end your day before it starts. Privacy. Forget about it. Your family huddles nearby, parents, siblings, maybe that cousin who showed up last harvest and never left. Everyone's stirring now, grumbling in low tones, the air filled with the sounds of yawns and the occasional cough. A rat scurries across the corner, bold as brass, and you swat at it half-heartedly. Rodents are just part of the furniture here, modern aside. Imagine explaining to these folks that in your time, people pay a premium for rustic vibes with exposed beams. They'd laugh, or more likely, stare blankly before getting back to survival mode. You stretch, regretting it instantly as a chill wind sneaks in, raising goosebumps. The hearth in the center of the room is cold, ashes from last night's fire barely glowing. Lighting it means gathering kindling, but wood's scarce. Poaching from the Lord's forest could cost you a hand, literally. The smell intensifies as you move, a potent mix of unwashed bodies, animal dung, and that ever-present mold creeping up the walls. Scented candles, a pipe dream. Beeswax is for the wealthy, and tallow dips just add a greasy smoke that clings to everything. You cough, tasting the stale air, and think longingly of a hot shower. But no, your day kicks off with this sensory assault, a reminder that comfort is centuries away, a light joke to ease the tension. If medieval life had Yelp reviews, this hut would get 1 star for authentic experience, but the complimentary fleas were a bit much. You rub your eyes, trying to shake off the grogginess, but there's no coffee brewing. That's another luxury for the future. Instead, you brace for the cold reality outside, where the village stirs with the same weary rhythm. Pushing open the creaky door, more a slab of wood on leather hinges, you're greeted by a grey dawn, mist rolling over muddy paths that double as sewers. Chickens peck at the ground, scattering as you step out, your feet sinking into the muck. The village is a cluster of similar huts, smoke starting to rise from a few chimneys, but yours lags. You fetch a bucket from the well, the rope frayed and splintery, drawing up questionably clear water. Splashing your face, you wince at the icy shock, but it's better than nothing. Back inside, the family gathers, sharing a loaf of stale bread that's hard as a rock, dipping it in ale to soften it up, since water's risky. Kids whine, elders mutter prayers, and you realize this is just the prelude. A fringe fact: some medieval texts mention bedfellows sharing warmth, but in crowded huts like yours, it often led to accidental family expansions. Talk about awkward mornings. You ponder the day ahead, but for now, it's about enduring this filthy start. The bell tolls again, calling for morning mass, and you hurry to comply. Skipping could label you a heretic. As you trudge out, fleas still itching, you can't help but chuckle inwardly. In your era, people romanticize this with nights and feasts. But the reality? It's a gritty slog where even waking up deserves a medal. Historians debate if urban dwellers fared better than rural ones, with evidence from excavated sites showing city folk had access to bathhouses, though better is relative when cholera's on the menu. You press on, the stench fading slightly in the open air, but knowing it's just the beginning of a day that tests every fiber of your being. You stumble out of your straw-filled nightmare, the morning chill biting at your exposed skin, as you realize the next challenge awaits: answering nature's call in medieval Europe. Spoiler alert, it's not a soothing trip to a tiled bathroom with fluffy towels. Instead, you're thrust into a world where hygiene is more gamble than guarantee, and the facilities make a porta potty at a music festival look luxurious. The air outside your hut is damp, carrying the earthy tang of mud mixed with something far less pleasant. Let's just say the village street doubles as an open sewer. You clutch your threadbare tunic, already itching from last night's flea party, and brace for an experience that'll make you long for indoor plumbing. Your destination is a rickety wooden bucket tucked behind the hut, half hidden by a sagging fence that offers zero privacy. It's already brimming thanks to Uncle Cedric's questionable stew last night, and the smell hits you like a punch to the face. Imagine rotting cabbage and despair, bottled for your displeasure. Mainstream fact. Medieval sanitation was so poor that towns like London had night soil collectors who carted waste away, but only the wealthy could afford such services. Out here in the village, you're on your own, and the bucket's your throne. You squat, holding your breath, eyes watering as you try to ignore the buzzing flies that seem way too enthusiastic about your presence. A quirky tidbit: some folks used a communal guardrobe, a fancy term for a hole in a wall where waste dropped straight into a ditch. Or, if you're lucky, a moat. Imagine explaining that to your modern friends over coffee. Yeah, my bathroom's a cliff with a view. There's no toilet paper, of course. You glance around for options: straw, a leaf, maybe a rag if you're feeling posh. Most times, it's just your hand and a quick rinse in a bucket of questionable water, a light joke to ease the grimness. If you invented toilet paper in 1325, you'd either be a millionaire or burned as a sorcerer for such unnatural softness. You finish up, shouting, "Gardez l'eau," Old French for "watch out below," as you tip the bucket's contents into the street. The splash joins the murky stream trickling past, carrying yesterday's leftovers from half the village. You step back quickly, but not before a stray droplet lands on your foot, making you grimace. Privacy? Non-existent. Your neighbor Agnes peers over her fence, muttering about your aim, while her kids giggle and point. If you're in a slightly fancier town, you might trek to a public latrine, a long bench with holes over a pit, where you sit elbow to elbow with strangers, making awkward small talk while trying not to inhale. Ventilation is a myth, and the stench could knock out a horse. Historians still argue whether these communal setups spread disease faster than private buckets, with some evidence suggesting latrines were breeding grounds for dysentery. You'd rather not test that theory, but options are limited. Even castles aren't much better. Their guardrobes often empty into moats, which explains why sieges sometimes involved enemies sneaking in through the waste chute. Talk about a dirty job. You shudder at the thought, wiping your hands on your tunic, which is already a canvas of stains. Bathing? Don't get your hopes up. Water's a hassle to fetch, and heating it over a fire takes hours. Plus, there's a lingering belief that washing too much invites sickness by opening your pores to bad air. A fringe fact: some monks avoided bathing altogether, thinking filth was a sign of piety. Imagine the smell at their sermons. You might splash your face with cold, well water, but that's it. Soap, if you can get it, is a gritty mix of animal fat and ash more abrasive than cleansing. You catch a glimpse of yourself in a puddle, hair matted, skin smudged, and wonder how anyone here finds romance. Another light joke. Medieval dating profiles would probably list owns a clean rag as a top trait. The lack of hygiene doesn't just test your patience, it's a health hazard. Fleas and lice thrive in this environment, and every itch reminds you they're throwing a party on your scalp. You scratch absent-mindedly, noticing a rash creeping up your arm, probably just irritation. But in this era, it could be the start of something deadly. No one's rushing to a dermatologist. You just pray it's not scabies and move on. The village well is your next stop, but the water's cloudy, and you recall hearing about a cow that fell in last week. Boiling it is your best bet, but that means gathering scarce firewood, risking the Lord's wrath if you're caught foraging without permission. As you trudge back to the hut, dodging puddles that are not just rainwater, you realize hygiene here isn't about feeling fresh. It's about survival. Modern aside, imagine trying to sell these folks on a subscription to scented body wash. They'd probably trade it for an extra loaf of bread. The church bell rings again, pulling you toward Mass. But the thought of sitting in a packed pew, surrounded by unwashed bodies, makes you cringe. You're already dreaming of a hot shower. But for now, you settle for rubbing your hands in the dirt to clean them. A medieval life hack that's as sad as it sounds. The day's barely begun, and you're already counting the hours until you can collapse back into that buggy straw bed. If you make it that far, you shuffle back into the hut, the morning's indignities still clinging to you like a bad dream, your stomach rumbling with a hunger that's more growl than whisper. The fire's been coaxed to life now, a meager flicker in the hearth, casting long shadows across the dirt floor, and the air fills with the smoky scent of burning twigs. Better than the bucket's aroma, but not by much. Breakfast awaits. Though calling it that feels generous, it's more a survival ritual, a gloopy mess designed to keep you upright until noon. You squat by the pot, peering into the bubbling concoction that looks like it was stirred by a reluctant troll. Pottage, they call it. A thick stew of grains, roots, and whatever scraps the garden or market yielded. Today, it's turnips again, a handful of beans, and some wilted greens that might have been edible last week. The pot's been simmering for days, new bits tossed in without much ceremony, turning it into a perpetual soup that's equal parts nourishment and science experiment. You ladle a portion into a wooden bowl, the steam rising in lazy curls that carry a faint, earthy whiff. Think boiled socks with a hint of barley. No silverware. You use your fingers or a chunk of bread as a scoop, the warmth seeping into your hands like a rare comfort. The bread itself is a beast, a dense rye loaf, coarse and speckled with bits that crunch suspiciously under your teeth. Mainstream fact, medieval bread was often maslin, a mix of rye and wheat when available. But for peasants, it was bulked with cheaper fillers like pea flour to stretch supplies during lean times. You bite down and it fights back, requiring a chew that's more workout than meal. A quirky tidbit. In some regions, bakers added ground acorns or even sawdust to pad out the dough during famines. Nutritious? Debatable. But it kept folks from starving, or at least delayed the inevitable. Washing it down? No fresh squeezed orange juice or steaming coffee here. You reach for a mug of small beer, a weak ale that's more hydration than buzz, brewed to kill off the nasties in the water. It's flat, slightly sour, and room temperature. But it beats the alternative, straight from the stream, teeming with invisible threats. Kids sip it too, their little faces puckering at the taste. But no one's complaining. It's safer than milk, which sours quickly without refrigeration. Modern aside, imagine pitching this to your barista. I'll have a medieval latte. Hold the foam, add the survival vibes. You gulp it down, the liquid sloshing in your empty belly, and feel a faint warmth spread, though it's probably just a placebo against the morning chill. Meat, dream on. That's reserved for feast days or if the Lord's feeling generous after a hunt. Most weeks, it's vegetarian by default. Beans, leeks, maybe an egg if the hens cooperated. Cheese might appear on Sundays, a hard wedge that's more rind than reward. But today, it's absent. Fruit's seasonal, and right now, the orchards are bare, so no crisp apples to brighten the gloom. Spices, those are for the elite. A pinch of salt is your luxury, locked away like treasure to avoid theft. You stir the pottage, watching a mystery lump surface. Could be a carrot, could be something else. And spoon it in, the texture mushy and bland, like eating warm wallpaper paste. A light joke. If this were a cooking show, the host would say, and now, add essence of despair for that authentic medieval flair. The family gathers around, bowls in hand, eating in silence, broken only by slurps and the occasional belch. No table manners required. It's about fueling up fast before the fields call. Your joints still ache from waking, and this meal does little to energize. It's sustenance, not satisfaction. Historians still argue whether the monotony of peasant diets led more to malnutrition or outright famine resistance, with some studies of dental remains showing widespread deficiencies in vitamins. You chew slowly, grinding through the gritty bread, bits sticking in your teeth like unwelcome guests. No floss, so you pick at it with a fingernail, hoping it doesn't spark an ache later. Dental woes are a whole other nightmare. As you finish, wiping your mouth on your sleeve, the bell tolls again, urging you toward the day's labor. But for a moment, you linger by the fire, the warmth, a brief respite in this endless cycle. Another light joke. Pottage might not win Michelin stars, but it's got longevity. Some pots were said to bubble for generations, like a family heirloom you can't escape. You set the bowl aside, stomach settled, but not satisfied, and glance at the door. Outside, the village hums with similar routines, smoke rising from huts as folks brace for the grind. Remember that bucket adventure earlier? At least breakfast didn't involve shouting warnings to passers-by, small mercies in this unforgiving world. Pushing to your feet, you feel the meal's weight, heavy and uninviting, but it's fuel for the toil ahead. No seconds. Portions are rationed to make it last. The kids scamper off with their share, already eyeing chores, while elders mutter about the harvest. A fringe fact, in rare good years, some peasants brewed caudle, a spiced ale porridge for invalids. Fancy, right? But today, it's plain old pottage, a reminder that variety is for the lords feasting on roasted meats and wine. You sigh, dreaming of avocado toast or a smoothie bowl, luxuries that would baffle everyone here. Modern sarcasm aside, if time travel existed, the first thing you'd pack is a care package of spices, because enduring this blandness without complaint, that's the real medieval superpower. The fire crackles low, embers glowing like distant stars, and you know it's time to move. Breakfast doesn't invigorate, it just sustains, a grim ritual in the dance of survival. You step out, the air crisp, carrying the faint scent of baking from the village oven. Communal bread day, perhaps a slight upgrade, but your loaf's already gone. Crumbs on your tunic a testament to the meal's brevity. As you head toward the fields, stomach churning mildly, you ponder the day's risks. Will the pottage sit well, or rebel later? In this era, even eating is a roll of the dice. You wipe the last remnants of pottage from your chin, the sticky residue clinging like an unwanted memory, and turn your attention to the heap of fabric in the corner that's supposed to pass for your wardrobe. The fire's glow dances weakly on the walls, casting flickering shadows that make the room feel even smaller, more confining. Dressing here isn't about style or comfort. It's a battle against the elements, the itch, and the sheer monotony of wearing the same grimy layers day in, day out. You reach for your tunic, a rough-spun wool thing that's seen more seasons than you've had hot meals. Its fibers coarse and unforgiving against your skin. As you pull it over your head, it snags on your hair, releasing a faint puff of dust and that familiar, earthy stench, like a mix of sweat, smoke, and something vaguely animal. No fresh laundry scent. Washing is a luxury reserved for rare sunny days when you can haul water from the well and scrub it against a rock with lye that burns your hands. Underneath, linen shift if you're lucky. But today, it's absent. Gone commando, as the modern saying goes. Though here, it's just practical to avoid extra layers that harbor more bugs. The tunic hangs loose, belted at the waist with a strip of leather that's frayed from constant use. And you adjust it, feeling the immediate prickle where wool meets bare skin. Mainstream fact. Medieval clothing for peasants was typically made from wool or linen, with dyes like woad for blue if affordable, but most stuck to natural greys and browns to hide the dirt. You tug at the sleeves, already spotting a new tear from yesterday's labors, and sigh. Mending means needlework by firelight, pricking your fingers in the dim glow. A quirky tidbit. Some folks believed wearing clothes inside out could ward off witches, a superstition that led to awkward mix-ups during hasty mornings. Imagine showing up to Mass looking like you dressed in the dark, which honestly, you probably did. Shoes are next, if you can call them that. Crude leather wraps stitched together with sinew, offering about as much support as walking on wet leaves. Most days, you go barefoot, toes sinking into the cool mud outside, dodging sharp stones and the occasional gift from a wandering pig. The sensation is gritty, almost grounding. But one wrong step on a thorn could mean infection. And with no antibiotics, that's a ticket to hobbling for weeks. You lace them up loosely, the leather stiff and cracking, and feel the immediate chafe against your heels. Blisters are your constant companions, like unwanted travel buddies on this endless journey. Modern aside, picture trying to sell these to a sneakerhead. Vintage medieval kicks, zero cushion, maximum authenticity. A light joke to lighten the load. If fast fashion existed back then, it'd be called slow decay, since your outfit lasts until it falls apart. The itch sets in almost immediately, a creeping sensation that starts at your scalp and works its way down. Lice are the uninvited guests, nesting in the seams of your tunic, Their bites like tiny pinpricks that demand constant scratching. You rake your nails across your arm, drawing a faint red line, but relief is fleeting. Everyone's got them, from peasants to priests, turning the village into one big scratching symphony. Bedbugs join the party at night, but during the day, it's fleas hopping from your clothes to the floor and back again. No flea collars or sprays. You might crush a few with your fingers, but it's a losing battle. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of parasites contributed more to skin conditions or the spread of diseases like typhus, with some skeletal evidence showing chronic irritation in remains from this era. You scratch your neck absent-mindedly, feeling a bump that could be a bite, or something worse. Rashes flare up without warning, raw and angry, with no creams to soothe them. Layering up for the weather? A hooded cloak if the rain's threatening. But it's just more wool, heavy and damp from yesterday's drizzle. Women's attire adds skirts that drag in the mud, while men opt for hose that bunch uncomfortably. No underwear as you know it, breeches or brays for some, but often skipped to save on fabric. You adjust everything, the fabrics chafing in places you'd rather not think about, and head to the door, already dreaming of shedding it all at day's end. Another light joke. Medieval Fashion Week would feature models strutting in eternal grunge, with lice as the must-have accessory. The family eyes you, no comments on your look. Appearance is secondary to function, and yours functions just enough to keep you covered. Outside, the village paths are alive with folks in similar garb, a sea of muted tones blending into the landscape. You trudge along, the weight of your clothes pulling at your shoulders, amplifying the ache from breakfast's meager fuel. Remember that well water from earlier? Splashing it on your face did little to freshen up. Now, it's evaporated, leaving a film that mixes with sweat as the sun peeks through. Washing clothes is a chore. Boil water, pound with ashes, hang to dry in wind. That's as reliable as a fair weather friend. Most times, you beat the dust out with a stick and call it good. A fringe fact. In some monastic orders, undergarments were changed only once a year, tied to vows of poverty. Talk about commitment to the cause. The discomfort builds as you move, every step a reminder of the fungal threads lurking in damp folds. You pause to scratch again, drawing a glance from a passerby who nods sympathetically. It's universal here, no shame in it. Modern sarcasm. If you bottled this itch as a workout app, it'd be medieval core, scratch your way to abs. But humor aside, it's wearing. Your skin's a battlefield, raw from constant assault, with no end in sight. As you approach the fields, the tunic sticks to your back, already warming under the weak sun. Dressing done, but the misery lingers, a constant hum beneath the day's demands. You flex your fingers, calloused from prior days, and grip a tool waiting by the hut, a hoe that's seen better times. The fabric shifts uncomfortably, but you press on, the itch a dull roar now. No changing outfits midday. This is it until nightfall, when you peel it off like shedding a second skin. The church bell fades in the distance, and you merge with the flow of villagers, all clad in variations of the same weary uniform. Survival mode engaged, fashion forgotten. You emerge from the hut, the weight of your scratchy tunic pulling at your shoulders like an insistent child, and the morning light filters through the mist, casting a pale glow on the village path ahead. As you adjust your belt, A familiar throb pulses in your jaw, a dull reminder that oral care in this era is less about fresh breath and more about enduring quiet agony. You run your tongue over your teeth, feeling the rough patches where decay has set in, and wince, brushing. That's a distant fantasy. Instead, you might chew on a twig from a hazel tree, frayed at the end to scrape away the worst of the grime, or rinse with a swig of vinegar if the household has any left. The taste is sharp, puckering your mouth, but it does little against the build-up from weeks of gritty bread and ale. The air carries the faint scent of wood smoke from neighboring fires, mingling with the earthy dampness, and you spit discreetly into the mud, hoping no one notices. Your smile, if you dare to show it, reveals a battlefield, gaps where teeth have loosened and fallen out, stains from fermented grains that cling like shadows, and swollen gums that bleed at the slightest poke. By your mid-20s, it's common. Folks here lose molars early, chewing reduced to a careful grind on one side to avoid sparking pain. Mainstream fact: sugar was rare for peasants, but becoming more common among nobles through trade, leading to faster decay in the upper classes, as evidenced by royal dental records from the period. You probe a sore spot with your finger, the ache flaring like a hot coal, and recall hearing tales of toothworms, mythical creatures believed to burrow into enamel. A quirky tidbit that explains why some drill holes to let them out, only worsening the rot. Modern aside, imagine a dentist's waiting room here. No magazines, just prayers and a flask of strong ale for courage. The pain builds as you walk, each step jarring the throb, turning simple tasks into ordeals. Toothaches are everyday weather, unpredictable, relentless, making you irritable and distracted. No over-the-counter relief. You might brew a herbal poultice from cloves if the market has them, pressing it against the gum for numb relief. But that's a luxury. More often, it's endure or extract, and the latter means visiting the barber surgeon, a jack of all trades who trims hair 1 minute and yanks teeth the next. You shudder at the thought. His shop is a dim stall in the village square, tools laid out on a blood-stained cloth, pliers, hooks, and a mallet for stubborn cases. No anesthesia beyond a swig of whiskey or biting on a leather strap. The procedure's a symphony of grunts and cracks that echo through the street. If the ache turns feverish, infection sets in, swelling your cheek like a ripe plum, and sepsis looms, a killer that claims lives from something as mundane as a cracked molar. Historians still argue whether poor dental hygiene contributed more to overall mortality than famine, with some analyses of mass graves showing abscesses in up to half the skulls examined. You massage your jaw, the pressure offering fleeting ease, but know if it worsens, you'll have no choice. The barber greets you with a gap-toothed grin of his own, sharpening his iron hook by candlelight, the flame flickering like a hesitant witness. He ties a string around the offending tooth, slams the door on it, yank, or pries with pliers while you grip the chair, eyes watering. A light joke, medieval dentistry's tagline: we'll pull your problems, and maybe a few extras for good measure. Blood fills your mouth, metallic and warm as he works. No sterile gloves or rinses, just a rag to dab the flow. Post-procedure, you rinse with salt water. The sting is a cruel encore, and you hope it heals without complication. But often it doesn't. Fevers rage, turning a simple cavity into a death sentence. Bad breath is universal, a cloud that follows conversations, making kisses rare and cautious. Halitosis from decay and diet, unchecked by mints or mouthwash. You avoid smiling widely, lips pressed tight, self-conscious in a world where livestock often outranks your grin in value. Another light joke: if online dating existed, profiles would boast full set of teeth like it's a castle moat, rare and impressive. As you leave the imaginary barber's grasp, the village bustles around you, blacksmiths hammering, children chasing chickens, all with similar dental woes hidden behind stoic faces. Remember that itchy tunic from dressing? Now it chafes against sweat from the pain's stress, amplifying discomfort. You chew gingerly on the walk to the fields, favoring one side, the throb a constant drumbeat. No floss or picks, bits of breakfast lodge between teeth, fermenting into future problems. A fringe fact: some healers recommended rubbing teeth with burnt mouse droppings for whitening. Effective? Doubtful, but desperation breeds odd remedies. The church looms ahead, its bells silent now, but Mass will include prayers for health, including silent pleas for dental mercy. You join the queue for communal bread, handed out post-service, its hardness a test for your aching jaw. Modern sarcasm: swapping this for a soft croissant would be heresy. But oh, the temptation. Pain shapes your day, slowing steps, sharpening temper. A reminder that even small woes magnify in this unforgiving life. You press on, jaw clenched, not from resolve, but necessity. The fields waiting, indifferent to your grimace. Noon approaches, sun climbing, and the heat adds to your discomfort. Beads of sweat trickling down your brow and stinging your eyes. The path to the fields winds through the village, past thatched roofs leaking wisps of smoke, and you catch snippets of chatter. Neighbors complaining about their aches, a shared misery that bonds more than any feast. Your tooth pulses in rhythm with your footsteps, each one a jolt that makes you grit what's left of your molars. The landscape opens up, muddy furrows stretching like scars across the earth, and you spot fellow peasants already bent over, hoes rising and falling in weary cadence. Joining them means ignoring the pain, but distraction helps. The physical labor drowns out the throb, at least for a while. You grab your tool, the wooden handle smooth from years of use, and start digging, the earth cool and clammy under your fingers. Every swing sends a vibration up your arms, jarring your jaw just enough to remind you of the barber's hook. A third light joke: if teeth could talk, yours would beg for mercy, or at least a vacation from that endless pottage grind. The sun beats down, turning the air humid and thick, and you wipe your face with a sleeve, the fabric now damp and even more irritating. Birds wheel overhead, their calls mocking your grounded plight, while in the distance the Lord's manor looms, its inhabitants likely enjoying softer foods, and perhaps even a resident physician with gentler methods. As the afternoon wears on, the ache ebbs and flows, a tide influenced by hunger or fatigue. Lunch is a quick break, more bread, perhaps a hunk of cheese if lucky, but chewing reignites the fire, making you swallow chunks whole to avoid aggravation. Companions share stories of lost teeth, one-upping each other with tales of heroic extractions, laughter masking the underlying fear. You nod along, contributing little, your mind wandering to what-ifs, a world with clean tools, numbing agents, preventive care. But here, it's raw endurance, a test of will against the body's betrayals. By evening, as shadows lengthen, the pain has dulled to a background hum, overshadowed by exhaustion from the day's toil. You trudge home, jaw sore, but intact, knowing tomorrow brings the same cycle. Dental woes aren't dramatic like plagues, but they're insidious, chipping away at your spirit one throb at a time. The hut welcomes you with its familiar dimness, and you collapse onto the straw, too tired to care about the fleas. Sleep comes fitfully, dreams haunted by hooks and worms, but morning will demand you rise again, smile, or no. You stagger away from the church steps, the bread's hardness still echoing in your sore jaw like a stubborn echo, and the path to the fields unfurls before you like an unwelcome invitation. The sun hangs low, painting the landscape in muted golds, but there's no time to admire it. Work calls, a relentless siren that drowns out any lingering thoughts of rest. Your back already twinges from the morning's minor exertions, a preview of the symphony of aches to come. As you grip your hoe, its handle worn smooth by countless hands before yours. The earth underfoot is soft, yielding with each step, releasing a loamy scent that mixes with the faint tang of manure spread across the furrows. This isn't a 9 to 5 with coffee breaks. It's a dawn-to-dusk grind where your body is the machine, and breakdown isn't an option. You reach the strip of land allotted to your family, part of the Lord's vast holdings, and begin the rhythmic swing. Hoe up, strike down, pull weeds that fight back like they're personally offended. The soil clings to your bare feet, cool and clammy, turning your toes into muddy stubs that ache with every shift. Mainstream fact: the three-field system was common in medieval agriculture, rotating crops to maintain soil fertility, which helped sustain populations but demanded constant manual labor from peasants like you. Sweat beads on your forehead almost immediately, trickling down to sting your eyes, and you wipe it away with a grimy sleeve, the tunic from earlier now sticking like a second, unwelcome skin. No ergonomic tools here. Your sickle is rusty, blunt from overuse, forcing extra effort that radiates up your arms into shoulders already knotted from yesterday. The work is monotonous, a hypnotic cycle that lulls your mind into a hazy fog. Dig, plant, harvest, repeat. 6 days a week, with Sunday's rest often hijacked by repairs or prayers. Children as young as 5 toddle alongside, tiny hands pulling at roots or scattering seeds, their laughter a brief spark in the drudgery. If you're a woman, the load doubles, fieldwork by day, then spinning wool or tending animals at dusk, all while minding the kids who cling to your skirts like burrs. A quirky tidbit: some peasants used moonlighting literally, working fields by moonlight during harvest to beat the weather. Romantic in stories, exhausting in reality. With owls hooting like judgmental overseers, you pause to stretch, your spine popping like dry twigs underfoot, and glance at the oxen plodding nearby. If your family can afford one, that is. Otherwise, it's hand plowing, turning your palms into calloused maps of hardship. Blisters bloom on your hands, raw and weeping, but you can't stop. Pausing means less yield, and less yield means hunger come winter. The Lord takes his share first: tithes, taxes, fees for using his mill, leaving scraps that barely sustain. No unions or sick days, a broken bone from a slip in the mud, wrap it in rags, hobble on, or risk eviction. Modern aside, Imagine clocking in here with a fitness tracker. It'd buzz goals smashed by noon, but you'd trade it for a cushy desk job in a heartbeat. A light joke. Peasant labor's the original CrossFit. Free membership. But the trainer's a feudal lord with a whip instead of a whistle. As the sun climbs, heat builds, turning the air thick and humming with insects that buzz around your sweat-slicked skin. You swat at them futilely, the motion pulling at that rash from the tunic, a callback to dressing's itchy torment. Thirst gnaws, but the water skin's warm and suspect, echoing breakfast's risky ale. Another sip, another gamble. Companions in the field grunt complaints. Bad weather ruined last crop. Raiders stole tools. The Lord demands more. You share nods, a silent camaraderie born of shared suffering. But chatter's limited. Energy's too precious to waste on words. If you're not farming, perhaps you're a blacksmith, hammering iron in a stifling forge, sparks flying like angry stars, or a tanner soaking hides in vats of urine that make your eyes water. Either way, it's body breaking, with pay that's survival at best. Historians still argue whether serfdom's rigid structure stifled innovation or stabilized society, with some pointing to manor records showing gradual improvements in tools over centuries. You heave another clod of earth, feeling the burn in your legs, knees grinding like poorly oiled hinges from years of this. No retirement plan. You work until you drop, replaced by kin who inherit the cycle. A fringe fact. In some villages, boon work meant extra days laboring for the Lord during peak seasons, like an unpaid overtime that could include bizarre tasks, such as chasing birds from crops with clappers, essentially being a human scarecrow on steroids. Lunch is a hurried affair under a tree's scant shade, a hunk of that jaw-testing bread, perhaps an onion for flavor, washed down with more ale. The breaks short, the overseer watchful from afar, ensuring no slacking. Back at it, the afternoon drags, sun beating down like a hammer on an anvil, your shadow shrinking as fatigue grows. Every muscle screams, but stopping invites fines or worse. Whippings for idleness aren't uncommon, a public spectacle that leaves scars deeper than physical. Another light joke. If this were a video game, it'd be Farmville, Hardcore Edition. No in-app purchases, just endless grinding for that elusive survival achievement. As dusk creeps in, painting the sky in soft purples, you straighten slowly, back curved like a question mark from the day's bend. Tools slung over your shoulder, you trudge home, feet throbbing, hands numb. The field's a patchwork of your effort that feels futile against nature's whims. Remember the pottage waiting? It'll taste like victory after this, a meager reward for bones that feel rearranged. The hut's dim light beckons, promising collapse onto straw, but sleep is haunted by tomorrow's repeat. Labor isn't a job, it's existence, a slow erosion of spirit and body in the name of feudal loyalty. Night falls fully as you near home, stars twinkling like distant promises, and you rub your eyes, dirt smearing across your face. The village quiets, fires dying down, but your mind races with aches. A third light joke. Peasants invented multitasking, plow, pray, and plot rebellion all at once, because who has time for hobbies? Collapsing inside, you shed the tunic gingerly, blisters protesting, and huddle by the embers. Work's toll lingers, a heavy blanket over your thoughts, As family murmurs fade into snores, tomorrow looms, but for now, exhaustion claims you, dreams fragmented by the hoe's swing. You limp away from the fields, the hoe slung over your shoulder like a defeated soldier's rifle, its weight pulling at muscles that scream for mercy after hours of bending and hacking at the unyielding earth. The sun dips lower, but the day's not done. Far from it. And now the sky shifts, clouds gathering like uninvited guests at a feast, hinting at the whims of weather that turn every season into a personal vendetta. In medieval Europe, the climate isn't a backdrop. It's a character in your daily drama, unpredictable and often cruel, with no forecast apps or cozy thermostats to soften the blow. You glance upward, the air thickening with moisture, and feel the first stir of unease. Will it pour or bake you dry? Either way, you're at its mercy. Your hut a flimsy shield against nature's tantrums. Winter's the harshest offender, a long, bone-chilling siege that starts with frost, creeping across the ground like a thief in the night. You huddle in your hut, the walls, thin planks riddled with gaps, whistling as wind sneaks through, carrying icy fingers that nip at your exposed skin. The fire in the hearth sputters weakly, fed by scant wood you've scavenged, but gathering more means risking the Lord's forests, where poaching a branch could earn you a noose as swiftly as stealing game. Mainstream fact: deforestation was rampant in medieval times due to high demand for fuel and building, leading to laws like the Forest Charter of 1217 in England that regulated wood collection, but often favoured nobles. You bundle in your lone tunic and cloak, the wool damp from perpetual humidity, turning it into a clammy shroud that chills rather than warms. Your breath fogs the air inside, crystals forming on your lashes, and sleep comes in fits, interrupted by shivers that rattle your teeth. Remember that aching jaw from earlier? It throbs worse in the cold, like ice picks jabbing at nerves. Frostbite lurks, turning toes numb and black if you're not vigilant. A bad luck ailment, with no salves beyond wrapping in rags and praying. The roof's thatch ices over, leaking drips that freeze into slick pools on the floor, making every step a slippery hazard. Livestock crowd in for shared heat, their breath adding a steamy, animal musk to the already stuffy space. But at least it's warmer than solitude. A quirky tidbit: some peasants stuffed their shoes with hay for insulation, creating makeshift medieval Uggs that often rotted and bred fungus. Cozy until the itch set in. You wake with stiff fingers like frozen twigs unwilling to bend, and breaking the ice on the water bucket becomes a morning ritual, the crack echoing like a grim applause. Modern aside, think of it as nature's freezer, but without the convenience of defrost. Your food preserves, sure, but so does the misery. Summer flips the script, transforming your world into a sweltering oven where heat waves shimmer off the fields like mocking mirages. The hut traps warmth, no vents or fans to circulate air, turning it into a stuffy box where sweat pours freely, soaking your tunic until it clings like a second, sodden skin. Flies swarm, drawn to the damp and the remnants of last week's stew fermenting in the corner. Their buzz a constant irritant that rivals the lice for annoyance. You labor under the relentless sun, no hat beyond a straw concoction that itches your scalp, skin burning red without salves or shade. Heatstroke sneaks up, a bad turn that leaves you dizzy, nauseous, and collapsing in the furrows with no one to call for help beyond shouting to distant neighbors. The air hums with insects, mosquitoes feasting on exposed flesh, leaving welts that swell and itch, compounding the discomfort from your already raw skin. No respite at night. The hut retains the day's heat, making sleep a sweaty tangle on the straw, babies crying from the oppression, neighbors arguing through thin walls. Rivers dry to trickles, wells dip low, forcing longer hauls for water that's warm and stagnant, breeding more threats to sip. Historians still argue whether climate shifts like the medieval warm period boosted agriculture or exacerbated droughts, with pollen records from bogs suggesting variable impacts across regions. You fan yourself with a hand, the motion futile, thighs chafing under layers you can't shed without scandal. Modesty demands coverage, even as sweat pools in uncomfortable places. A light joke. Summer's the original sauna, but instead of relaxation, you get free exfoliation from salt-crusted skin and bug bites as souvenirs. Rain, when it comes, is no blessing. Torrential downpours turn paths to quagmires, mud sucking at your feet like greedy hands, soaking through leather wraps until your toes prune and chill. The roof leaks in rivulets, pooling on the floor and turning your home into a soggy mess where mold blooms like unwelcome flowers, its musty scent a constant companion. Crops drown or rot, famine's shadow lengthening, while you bail water with buckets, arms aching from the extra toil. Windstorms rip at thatch, requiring hasty repairs atop rickety ladders, a fall risking broken bones that heal poorly without aid. A fringe fact: medieval weather lore included reading animal behaviors, like swallows flying low, signaling rain. Accurate enough, but no substitute for radar when a gale uproots your garden. Seasons blend their punishments. Spring's floods wash away seeds. Autumn's early frosts nip harvests short. You adapt, or try, stuffing cracks with rags, huddling for warmth, seeking shade under trees. But options are slim. The church preaches it's God's will, a test of faith. But in your bones, it feels like endless adversity. Another light joke. If weather apps existed, the forecast would read, misery, with a chance of more misery. Dress accordingly. Or don't. It won't help. Modern sarcasm. We'd complain about a rainy weekend. Here, it could mean starvation by spring. As evening deepens, a chill wind rises, foreshadowing night's bite, and you hurry home, cloak pulled tight. The hut's fire offers scant defense, embers glowing faintly as family clusters close. You rub hands together, feeling the day's labor in every joint, the weather's toll layering atop it like insult on injury. Sleep beckons, but drafts whisper through walls, promising restless hours. Tomorrow's sky, a mystery, but whatever it brings, you'll face it exposed, resilient in your fragility. The stars peek through clouds, indifferent witnesses, and you settle on the straw, body weary from the dual assault of work and elements. Dreams flicker with storms and suns, but dawn will demand you rise, ready or not. Weather shapes your world, a silent punisher that cares not for pleas, turning survival into an art of endurance. You shuffle back inside the hut, the evening's chill nipping at your heels like a persistent stray, and reach for the clay jug by the hearth, its contents sloshing faintly as you pour a measure into a chipped mug. Thirst tugs at you after the day's relentless toil, but quenching it feels less like refreshment and more like tempting fate. The liquid surface rippling innocently under the fire's glow. Water in this era isn't a trusted ally. It's a veiled adversary, lurking in streams and wells with promises of hydration that often conceal deadly surprises. You hesitate, mug halfway to your lips, the cool rim pressing against your skin, and inhale its faint, murky scent, a blend of earth and something subtly off, like forgotten leaves steeping too long. No pristine taps or bottled purity here. Every drop is drawn from nature's raw tap, filtered only by chance and the ground's indifferent sieve. The nearby brook babbles invitingly outside, its flow a soothing murmur that belies the hazards upstream. Chamber pots emptied without thought, livestock wading and relieving themselves, dead animals bloating in eddies that taint the current. You dip from it rarely for drinking, opting for the village well's deeper draw. But even that's compromised after rains wash in street filth, or when a bucket slips and contaminates the source. Parasites thrive unseen, tiny invaders like giardia or worse, twisting your insides into knots of agony if they take hold. Mainstream fact: boiling water for safety was known in some monastic traditions, but for peasants, it was impractical without abundant fuel, leading to widespread reliance on contaminated sources that fueled epidemics like typhoid. You swallow a cautious gulp, the liquid sliding down with a neutral chill, but unease lingers. Will this be the sip that sparks fever and cramps, confining you to the straw bed for days? Ale steps in as your reluctant hero, the small beer from breakfast's pot still simmering, its fermentation killing off the worst offenders in a process that's more alchemy than science. The brew's weak, barely buzzing, with a yeasty tang that puckers your tongue, but it's safer, providing calories and a mild barrier against the water's wrath. Children lap it up without complaint, their small frames adapting to what adults endure as necessity. No fruit juices or clean springs for variety. A quirky tidbit: in some regions, folks infused water with herbs like mint or fennel to mask tastes, believing it warded off corruption, though it did little against microbes that laughed at such folklore. You refill your mug with ale instead, the warmth from the fire seeping into the pottery, and sip slowly, the foam clinging to your upper lip like a fleeting moustache. Bathing tempts on warmer days, a plunge into the stream's embrace that washes away the grime from fields and fleas. But it's a production, stripping modestly behind bushes, scrubbing with handfuls of sand or ashes that leave skin raw and tingling. The church warns against excess, preaching that frequent immersion invites sin or sickness by exposing the body to humor's imbalance. Communal spots in towns turn soaks into social events, steam rising in clouds that carry whispers and scandals, but the water recirculates, sharing ailments as freely as gossip. You emerge dripping, goosebumps rising in the breeze, and dry with your tunic, the fabric absorbing moisture that mildews overnight. A callback to the weather's damp grip that turns everything musty. Modern aside, we test pH levels and add bubbles. Here, it's raw immersion with exfoliation, courtesy of river grit and bug bites. Rain offers a mixed gift, collected in barrels under eaves for washing or cooking, but it's open to the sky. Birds perch and drop contributions, Leaves decay into slime. Mosquitoes breed in stagnant pools. You strain it through cloth for clarity, but particles slip past, gritty on teeth or in stew. Crops thirst too, irrigated from ditches that double as drains, watering greens with the same tainted flow that could sicken you later. Historians still argue whether ale's dominance over water boosted health or hid nutritional gaps, with tavern ledgers showing vast consumption that sustained labor but strained livers over time. You ponder the jug, refilling for the family, each pour a quiet calculation. Hydrate now, or risk tomorrow's regret. The fire pops, sparks dancing like fleeting stars, and you feel the day's dirt caked on your skin, longing for a thorough cleanse that rarely comes. One misguided bath in foul water, and pores supposedly open to disease. Fever follows like a shadow. A light joke. If water were a friend, it'd be the unreliable type. Shows up refreshing, but leaves you with regrets and a stomachache by morning. Wells dry in droughts, forcing treks to distant sources. Buckets heavy on shoulders already bowed from toil. A fringe fact, alchemists distilled aqua vitae for elites, pure and potent. But peasants made do with folklore charms, like tossing silver coins in wells to purify. Placebo at best, rust at worst. Evening meal simmers with the same brew, flavors deepened by its edge, and you sip alongside pottage. The liquid's role in every bite a reminder of its power. Modern sarcasm. We'd sue for contamination. Here, you toast to survival, mug raised against the odds. Thirst slaked, you settle by the hearth. Family murmuring in the dimness. Water's threat fading into routine, but in dreams, streams might run red with warning, or wells echo empty, nature's jest in this unforgiving world. The night deepens, wind whispering through cracks, and you curl on the straw, body heavy with the day's accumulations. Tomorrow brings more draws from the well, more cautious sips, in a cycle where even sustenance whispers peril. Ale warms your belly, a gentle fog easing into sleep, but vigilance lingers. Water gives life, yet takes it subtly, a silent player in your daily dance. You ease onto the straw pallet as night fully claims the hut, the fire's dying embers casting a soft orange haze that flickers like hesitant memories across the dirt floor. But that nagging ache in your side refuses to fade, twisting sharper with each breath, like a thorn lodged deep. The ale's mild buzz dulls the edges slightly, a small mercy after the water's risky gamble. But illness in this time doesn't politely wait for dawn. It creeps in, uninvited, turning your body into a battlefield where cures often rival the affliction in brutality. You shift uncomfortably, the straw pricking through your tunic, and ponder calling for the village healer. Their remedies a mix of folklore, faith, and faint hope that feels more like rolling dice with your life than actual healing. The air hangs heavy with the scent of cooling ashes and lingering stew, a reminder that comfort is fleeting and medical help, it's a leap of faith into the unknown, where survival hinges on outdated wisdom and a prayer. The healer arrives at your summons, a stooped figure bundled in a cloak that smells of herbs and earth, their satchel clinking with vials and tools that glint ominously in the low light. Diagnosis begins with a poke and prod, fingers pressing into your tender spots as they mutter about humors out of whack, those mystical fluids dictating health like an internal weather system gone awry. Fever? Too much blood is heating you. Gut troubles? Phlegm or bile overflowing? It's all about balance, they insist, eyeing you with a mix of sympathy and calculation. Mainstream fact, the four humors theory, rooted in Hippocratic medicine and refined by Galen, guided treatments across medieval Europe, emphasizing equilibrium through lifestyle and interventions, as seen in widespread medical manuscripts like those from the Salerno school. You lie back, the straw crunching under you, and brace for what's next. The healer's breath warm and garlicky as they lean close, prescribing a purge or bleed to restore you. Bloodletting kicks off the ordeal, a vein in your arm sliced open with a lancet that's seen better days. The warm rush spilling into a bowl below, staining the edges crimson as dizziness creeps in. Leeches follow if blades feel too crude. Slimy little creatures plucked from a jar, their mouths latching onto your skin with a wet suck that sends shivers down your spine, drawing out the corrupt blood drop by drop. The sensation's oddly mesmerizing, like tiny vacuums at work, but weakness follows, leaving you lightheaded and pale, the room spinning gently as if the hut itself sways. A quirky tidbit. Some healers used cupping, heating glass cups to create suction on the skin, pulling blood to the surface in bruises that resembled love bites from a particularly aggressive suitor. Therapeutic, supposedly, but mostly just painful decoration. You endure it, the metallic tang of blood filling the air, mingling with the healer's herbal incense meant to ward off evil spirits that might be causing your woe. If it's melancholy gripping your mind, black bile's the culprit. Cured with laxatives brewed from senna or rhubarb that hit like a storm in your belly, waves of cramps forcing evacuation that leaves you drained and dehydrated on the chamber pot. Herbs play their part too. Valerian root steeped into a bitter tea for nerves, or poppy juice for pain that blurs the world into a hazy fog. But overdoses risk eternal sleep. A fine line walked blindly. Wounds or breaks demand cruder fixes. Bones set with a yank and crack that echoes your yelp, splintered with sticks and rags that chafe like the tunic's itch from mornings past. No clean stitches, threads pulled through flesh with hooks, the tug sending fire through your nerves, infection lurking if bad air seeps in. Surgeries, a candlelit nightmare, knives cauterized in flame, the sizzle of skin-sealing vessels but burning deep, pains so raw you bite on wood to stifle screams. God factors in heavily, the healer doubling as spiritual guide, sprinkling holy water or chanting prayers to exorcise demonic influences. Illness as punishment for sins after all. Confession spills from your lips, whispered regrets in the dimness, hoping absolution eases the ache more than any herb. Priests hover if it worsens. Last rites murmured as family weeps, the scent of incense thick and cloying, masking the sweat of fear. Modern aside, we'd scan with machines and dose antibiotics. Here, it's bleed now, pray later, with success hinging on luck rather than lab results. A light joke. Medieval medicine's like a bad blind date, promises relief, but often leaves you weaker and wondering why you bothered. Fevers burn unchecked, skin hot to the touch, delirium weaving visions of saints or sinners as compresses of vinegar-soaked cloths offer scant coolness. Beetle shells ground into powder for exotic cures, or gemstones pressed to foreheads for drawing out heat. But results vary. Miracles for some, graves for others. Barbers take the lead on many fixes. Their shops are crossroads of grooming and gore, where a shave precedes a lancing. Tools washed in the same basin that catches your blood. You imagine the pull of pliers on an abscess, the pop and ooze a grim release, but sepsis follows if unclean, turning local pain into systemic doom. Historians still argue whether the integration of Arabic medical texts via translations advanced European practices, or if reliance on ancient authorities stifled innovation, with debates centering on figures like Avicenna's influence on surgical techniques. The session ends with you weakened, pouch lighter from payment in eggs or labor, the healer departing with promises of improvement if you avoid cold foods or sinful thoughts. Pain lingers, a dull throb now joined by new soreness from the cure, leaving you questioning if enduring was wiser. A fringe fact: some treatments involve transference, rubbing ailments onto animals like rubbing a wart on a toad to pass it along. Harmless folklore. But try explaining that to the bewildered frog. Modern sarcasm. We'd rate doctors on apps. Here, it's word of mouth, with "didn't kill me yet" as 5 stars. Night deepens, family tiptoeing around your palate, and you sip broth laced with willow for mild ease. The bitterness, a fitting end to the day. Another light joke. Leeches as therapists. They suck out your problems, but charge by the bite and leave you feeling drained. Sleep tugs fitfully, dreams laced with blades and balances, but dawn demands recovery, fields calling regardless. Medicine tests as much as it treats, a torturous path where hope flickers like the embers, dim but persistent. The hut quiets, wind sighing outside, and you drift, body heavy with the day's trials. Tomorrow's humors wait, but for now, it's rest in the shadows. Cure's echo fading into hush. You curl tighter on the straw as the healer's footsteps fade into the night. The poultice's herbal sting lingering on your skin like a bitter aftertaste. But a hunger gnaws anew, pulling you toward the pot where supper simmers in its eternal bubble. The fire's glow dims to a whisper, casting long shadows that stretch across the hut like grasping fingers, and you ladle out a portion of the stew, its steam rising in lazy tendrils that carry a scent both comforting and suspicious. Earthy roots mingled with something faintly off, like meat on the edge of turning. Food in this era isn't a delight for the senses. It's a high-stakes wager, where every bite could nourish or betray, preservation a myth and spoilage a constant shadow. You stir the gloopy mass, chunks bobbing uncertainly, and spoon it in, the warmth spreading through your chest as you chew cautiously, mindful of that sore jaw from earlier mornings. Pottage dominates again, that perpetual pot of whatever's at hand. Grains swollen from days of simmering, turnips mushy and bland, beans that might have sprouted if left longer. It's less recipe, more accumulation, new scraps tossed atop old, fermenting into a flavor that's acquired at best, dubious at worst. Bread accompanies, a stale hunk torn by hand, its crust hard as leather and interior speckled with grit from the millstone. Or worse, ergot fungus in bad rye years, turning loaves into hallucinogenic traps that spark convulsions and visions of demons dancing. Mainstream fact: During the Great Famine of 1315 and 1317, poor harvests led to widespread consumption of adulterated grains, exacerbating malnutrition and disease across Europe, as chronicled in monastic annals that detail starved populations turning to desperate fillers. You bite down, the crunch echoing in your skull, and swallow, hoping tonight's not laced with that mind-bending mold. A quirky tidbit, ergotism or St. Anthony's fire, caused gangrene and madness, with some sufferers believing limbs burned off by holy flames, leading to pilgrimages where monks cured them with wine and rest, unknowingly diluting the toxin. Meat appears rarely, a treat from a slaughtered pig or poached game. But without fridges, it's salted or smoked in hasty rituals that ward off rot unevenly. Flies lay eggs in cracks, maggots wriggling like unwelcome surprises if hung too long. You poke at a stringy bit in your bowl, its texture chewy and gamey, the brine sharp on your tongue, but masking any off notes that hint at spoilage. One wrong hunk, and your gut rebels, cramps twisting like knives as toxins wage war inside. Vegetables fare no better. Turnips and cabbages dominate, boiled to softness that borders on slime, their flavors flat without spices, locked in the Lord's pantry. Fruit tempts in season, apples crisp and tart from the orchard, but rot sets in fast, skins wrinkling and flesh turning to mush, fermented into cider if you're quick, or wasted if not. Dairy's a dice roll. Milk sours in hours, curdling into lumps that float ominously, while cheese hardens to rock-like wedges loaded with bacteria that could spark fever or flux. You chew slowly, the family's murmurs fading as they eat in the dim light, bowls scraped clean to avoid waste. Hunger's ghost always hovers, making every morsel precious, even if questionable. No sell-by dates or inspections, instinct guides, a sniff or taste test that gambles your night on the pot or worse. Modern aside, we'd scan barcodes and check apps for recalls. Here, it's nose to the grindstone detection, with smells funny as your FDA. A light joke. If food poisoning had a medieval mascot, it'd be a turnip with a sinister grin. Bland on the outside, betrayal within, sponsoring your next purge session. Seasonings scarce. Onions and garlic your staples for punch. Salt a treasure sprinkled sparingly to preserve and flavor, but overuse risks salt sickness that swells limbs and taxes the heart. Herbs from the garden, thyme, sage, add whispers of taste if pests haven't claimed them. But exotic spices like pepper are lordly luxuries, costing more than your yearly wage, hoarded to flaunt wealth at feasts where you serve but never partake. Bread's the staple, but in lean times, it's stretched with bark or clay, turning loaves into dense bricks that sit heavy in your belly. Nutrition sparse, but bulk filling. You tear another piece, dipping it in the stew's broth, the sogginess softening its assault on your teeth. But grit scrapes your gums, a reminder of the mill's unwashed stones. Risks compound with politics. The game belongs to the Lord. Poaching a rabbit earns fines, imprisonment, or the noose. A hanging spectacle, where crowds jeer as you dangle for daring to feed your family. Fish from rivers might supplement, slimy and bony, but polluted waters taint them with the same ills that lurk in your drink. Storage is primitive. Salt barrels for meat, cool cellars for roots if your hut has one. But rats nibble unchecked, leaving droppings like unwelcome seasonings. You spot a shadow scurrying across the floor and swat futilely, the intruder vanishing into cracks, its feast on your stores a nightly theft. Historians still argue whether dietary monotony fostered resilience or accelerated decline, with skeletal analyses showing vitamin deficiencies that stunted growth and weakened bones across peasant classes. Supper winds down, bowls set aside, the pot returned to its simmer for tomorrow's editions. An ongoing experiment where freshness fades into familiarity. You lean back, stomach full but uneasy, waiting for any rumbles that signal trouble. Spoiled bites could mean vomiting by dawn, weakness sapping your field strength. A fringe fact: some ate panage, acorns foraged for pigs, but consumed by desperate humans, causing tannin poisoning that bloated bellies and fogged minds. Nature's cruel buffet. Another light joke: medieval meals are like blind dates with destiny. One might be a keeper, but most leave you regretting the commitment, curled up in regret. The family retires, snores rising softly, and you ponder the day's intake. Pottage's mystery lumps, bread's hidden grit, ale's safe but monotonous quench. Food tests you, a daily trial where nourishment dances with danger, survival's flavor bittersweet. Modern sarcasm. We'd Instagram our plates with filters. Here, it's eat fast, pray harder, hoping the next bite doesn't bite back. Fullness settles, heavy and warm, lulling you toward sleep. But vigilance whispers, will dawn bring vigor or vengeance from tonight's gamble? Dreams flicker with feasts unrealized, tables groaning under untouchable delights, but reality waits with the pot's eternal hum. You drift off, body sated yet wary, food's risky embrace a constant in this shadowed life. You stir on the straw pallet, the faint unease from last night's stew still simmering in your gut, but a sharper call pulls you upright, the church bell's insistent clang cutting through the dawn's quiet like a command from on high. The air carries a damp chill, tinged with the smoky residue of last night's fire, and you shuffle to your feet, brushing off fleas that cling like persistent sins. In this world, religion isn't a choice or a quiet comfort. It's the backbone of existence, a relentless rhythm that shapes every hour, every choice, every fear. You tug on your tunic, still itchy from days ago, and join the village stream toward the stone church, its silhouette looming like a stern parent over the huddled huts. Missing Mass isn't an option. Skip it, and whispers of heresy spread faster than mold, branding you a target for the priest's wrath, or worse, the village's judgment. You slip into the pew, rough wood creaking under your weight, the air thick with incense that clogs your throat and mingles with the unwashed scent of your neighbors packed shoulder to shoulder. The priest drones in Latin, a language as distant as the stars, his words a sacred code you can't decipher but must obey. Prayer punctuates the day, morning, noon, night, bells tolling like a cosmic clock, demanding you kneel, bow, confess, repeat. Mainstream fact: the medieval Catholic Church controlled not just spirituality, but law, education, and social order, with tithes, 10% of your crops or coin, mandatory, as recorded in ecclesiastical ledgers across Europe. You offer a handful of grain at the altar, your family's share, knowing it's less for your table, but more for your soul's ledger, or so they say. Neglected, and hell's vivid imagery, preached with fiery gusto, awaits. Rivers of flame, demons with pitchforks, eternal wails that make your toothache seem quaint. Sins is everywhere, a shadow you can't outrun. Eat meat on Friday. Sin. Covet the neighbor's ox, or his wife in a stray thought. Double sin. Even skipping a prayer to tend a sick child risks divine displeasure. The priests glare colder than winter's frost. You mutter Aves and Paternosters, fingers tracing a worn wooden cross, its edges smoothed by anxious grips. A quirky tidbit. Some believed wearing a scallop shell from a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela could shave years off purgatory. Fashion with a spiritual discount, though you can't afford the journey. The church calendar rules. Dozens of holy days, not for rest, but fasting, penance, or trudging to Mass. Each a reminder that joy's a luxury, indulgence a trap. Modern aside, we'd schedule mindfulness apps for balance. Here, it's kneel or be damned, with salvation sold by the sermon. Hell's not abstract. It's painted in sermons with such detail you smell the sulfur, feel the heat licking your skin. Priests wield stories of torment like weapons, ensuring compliance, while tithes drain your stores, leaving winter leaner. You glance at Agnes, your nosy neighbor, her eyes sharp for any lapse she can report, her piety a mix of fear and leverage, questioning the church. Unthinkable. Heretics burn, witches drown, skeptics vanish into correction cells. Historians still argue whether the church's grip stifled free thought or preserved social cohesion, with records of Inquisition trials showing both zealous control and rare defiance crushed swiftly. You bow your head, lips moving in rote prayer, but doubt flickers. Does God care about your turnips, or just your obedience? Confession looms weekly, a ritual where you kneel in the church's dim alcove, whispering missteps to a priest whose breath smells of ale and judgment. A stolen apple, a curse, muttered at a stubborn plough. Each earns penance, maybe lashes or extra prayers. Your knees sore from hours on stone. The Bible's Latin locks its secrets. You rely on clergy to interpret, their words shaping your world like law. A fringe fact, some priests sold indulgences, slips of parchment promising less time in purgatory. Capitalism in a cassock, though you can't afford the paper. You rise from the pew, legs stiff, and file out, sunlight harsh after the gloom. The sermon's warnings echoing. Obey, pay, pray, or burn. Daily life bends to faith's demands. Work pauses for Angelus bells. Meals blessed to ward off evil. Dreams haunted by sermons of brimstone. Women face extra scrutiny. Outspoken ones risk scold labels or worse, witch hunts if they know herbs too well. You recall the healer's visit, their prayers as much a cure as their herbs, a callback to medicine's divine overlay. A light joke. If medieval life had a playlist, it'd be all hymns, no skips, because God's the DJ, and he's got no chill. Modern sarcasm. We'd mute notifications for peace. Here, bells are unmissable, ringing through your soul like an alarm you can't snooze. Mass ends, but religion lingers, a weight heavier than your hoe. You trudge home, fields waiting, but pause to toss a coin at a roadside shrine, hoping for favor. Another light joke. Church is the original subscription service. Pay up, show up, or risk eternal cancellation. The day unfolds under God's watchful eye, every step a balance between survival and salvation. No respite from either. You glance back at the church, its spire piercing the sky, a reminder that here, faith isn't comfort, it's control, woven into life's fabric like the itch in your tunic. Night falls, the hut's darkness a cocoon, and you whisper a final prayer, hedging bets against damnation. Sleep comes, uneasy, with visions of flames or fields, but morning's bells will call again. Relentless as time itself, you trudge back from the church, the weight of prayers and warnings heavy on your shoulders. The village path slick with morning dew that soaks through your worn shoes, amplifying the chill in your bones. The bell's echo fades, but its grip lingers, and as a woman in this medieval world, you feel the world's expectations tighten around you, like a corset of obligation and scrutiny. Life here is hard for everyone, but for you, it's a relentless gauntlet. Filth, hunger, and labor layered with the added burdens of childbirth, subservience, and a society that sees you as little more than property or a potential witch. You adjust your skirt, its hem caked with mud from yesterday's fields, and brace for the day, knowing every step is a test of endurance in a game rigged against you. The air carries the sharp scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke, a reminder of the hearth waiting, but also the endless tasks tied to it. Your role is carved in stone from birth. Marry young, bear children, serve your household, and keep silent. By 12, betrothals are common. By 14, you might be wed, your dowry, perhaps a goat or a sack of grain, sealing alliances rather than affections. Love's a luxury, not a requirement, and your husband's word is law, his authority backed by church and custom. You're expected to churn butter, spin wool, tend animals, and cook that eternal pottage, all while nursing infants or chasing toddlers through the hut's cramped chaos. Mainstream fact, medieval women's life expectancy was lower than men's, often due to childbirth complications, with records indicating up to 20% of mothers died in labor or from postpartum infections in rural areas. You feel a twinge in your lower back, a ghost of past pregnancies, or a warning of ones to come. Each a lottery where survival isn't guaranteed. Childbirth is a shadowed spectre, a roll of the dice with no midwives, boasting sterile tools or epidurals. You labor on straw, sweat beading in the dim light, a neighbor or wise woman guiding you with herbs and prayers, their hands rough but practiced. Complications, breech births, hemorrhages, mean death for you, the child, or both, with no hospital to rush to, only a priest for last rites if it goes south. A quirky tidbit, some women wore amulets of jet or coral during labor, believed to ease pain through mystical properties, though their success was more hope than science. Think placebo with a side of superstition. You grit your teeth through imagined contractions, the pain blending with memories of fieldwork, your body a machine that can't pause, even as it breaks. Beyond the physical, society's eyes are relentless. Unmarried? Suspicious, a burden on family resources. Widowed? Vulnerable, at risk of losing land to greedy kin or lords. Outspoken, dangerous, Herbal knowledge or a sharp tongue could land you labeled a witch, especially if crops fail or someone needs a scapegoat. A glance at the wrong time, a laugh too loud, and whispers start, fingers pointing as neighbors like Agnes sharpen their tongues for the priest. Witch trials, though peaking later, sprout from these seeds, with women drowned or burned for crimes like knowing too much about plants. You keep your head down, stirring the pot, your voice low to avoid trouble, but resentment simmers. Why must strength mean silence? Your work never ends. Field tasks mirror men's, hoeing, planting, harvesting, but home adds layers, weaving, mending, feeding livestock, all while children cling to your skirts, their small hands tugging as you balance a basket of damp wool. No daycare or weekends. Kids help by 6, wielding tiny rakes or fetching water, their childhood swallowed by survival. Historians still argue whether women's domestic roles empowered them through household control or trapped them in endless servitude, with some pointing to manor records showing women managing estates in husbands' absences, wielding quiet influence. You knead dough for tomorrow's bread, knuckles aching, and feel the weight of expectation. Produce heirs, keep peace, don't falter, or risk being corrected by a husband's hand, socially sanctioned and rarely questioned. Modern aside, we'd call this multitasking. Here, it's just life, with no coffee breaks or self-care apps to soften the grind. A light joke, medieval women's to-do list: birth, bake, bow, repeat until eternity, or until you're accused of hexing the cow. Your tunic chafes, a callback to dressing's itch, now worsened by sweat from hauling water, the bucket's weight pulling at arms already sore from spinning. Education's a distant dream. Unless you're noble, your learning stops at practical skills. No books or schools to spark ambition. Convents offer escape for some, but vows of silence and seclusion feel like trading one cage for another, your spirit too restless for cloistered walls. Socially, you're invisible unless useful or troublesome. Markets buzz with men's deals, while you're bartering, eggs for thread, herbs for salt, happens in hushed corners, your worth tied to output, not voice. A fringe fact: some women brewed ale commercially, alewives running small enterprises, but overstepping could earn scorn or accusations of watering the brew. Capitalism with a witchy catch. You navigate this tightrope, smiling politely at the miller who shortchanges you, knowing defiance invites gossip that spreads like wildfire. Another light joke: if medieval women had resumes, they'd list surviving suspicion as a core skill, with dodging witch hunts as a bonus qualification. As night falls, you tend the fire, its crackle a rare comfort, and settle children onto straw, their soft breaths a fleeting reward. The church's shadow looms, its bells silent now but ever present, dictating modesty, obedience, submission. You whisper a prayer, less for faith, more for survival, knowing tomorrow brings the same cycle: labor, birth, silence, repeat. Modern sarcasm. We demand equal pay and maternity leave. Here, you're lucky if your husband doesn't trade you for a better ox. Sleep pulls, but dreams are heavy with burdens. Fields, babies, accusations. Yet you endure, a quiet force in a world that demands you bend, but never break. The hut grows still, embers fading to grey, and you drift, body aching but spirit stubborn, carrying the weight of womanhood in this unforgiving age. You ease away from the hearth as the last embers sigh into darkness, the hut's quiet broken only by the soft rustle of straw under shifting bodies. But a distant shout pierces the night, a brawl spilling from a neighbor's door, fists flying in the moonlight like shadows come alive. The air cools rapidly, carrying the metallic tang of blood, or perhaps just your imagination. But violence in this world isn't a distant headline. It's woven into the fabric of daily life, as common as the mud under your feet and twice as sticky. You pull your cloak tighter, heart quickening at the scuffle's echoes, knowing one wrong word or glance could drag you into the fray. Where law bends to whim and survival means dodging blows both literal and figurative. The village sleeps uneasily, its peace fragile as eggshell, and you lie awake, ears straining for the next outburst. The night's hush, a thin veil over simmering tensions. Morning brings no reprieve. You step out into the grey dawn, the path scarred with last night's evidence. A broken jug, a splatter of dark stain, and head to the fields, where arguments erupt over boundaries like weeds in spring. A shove here, a curse there, and suddenly tools become weapons, hoes swinging in arcs that could split skulls as easily as soil. Violence is normalized, expected even. Husbands, discipline. Wives, with open hands. Parents cuff children for minor mischief, and street fights flare over spilled ale or stolen glances. You navigate carefully, eyes down, avoiding the miller's glare after last week's short measure, knowing a wrong step could end in bruises or broken bones. Mainstream fact. Medieval justice relied on corporal punishments like flogging or stocks, with the Assize of Clarendon in 1166, establishing trial by jury, but often favouring ordeal methods that left lasting scars on the accused. You witness a thief dragged to the square, hand-chopped for pilfering bread, the crowd cheering as the axe falls, snacks in hand like it's a village fair. Punishments are spectacles designed to deter with drama, steal, lose a limb, lie, have your tongue pierced, gossip too freely, wear the scold's bridle, a metal cage clamped over your head with a bit gagging your mouth, paraded for all to mock. You shudder at the thought, remembering Agnes's sharp tongue. One day, it might earn her that iron muzzle, her words silenced in humiliating correction. Trial by ordeal tests innocence brutally. Plunge your hand into boiling water for a stone. If it heals clean in 3 days, you're pure. If not, guilty as charged. Or drown to prove virtue. Sink and you're innocent, but dead. Float and you're hanged as a witch. It's a no-win lottery. Justice more theatre than fairness. Crowds baying for blood under the guise of order. A quirky tidbit. Some ordeals involved trial by combat, where champions fought for the accused. But if you couldn't afford a fighter, God supposedly guided your weak arm. Divine intervention? Or just a fancy duel club for the strong? Domestic clashes are routine. Husbands legally allowed to chastise wives, slaps or beatings shrugged off as household matters. No authorities intervening unless it turns deadly. You flinch at raised voices from nearby huts, knowing bruises hide under sleeves. Silence the price of peace. Children learn early, cuffs for dawdling, their cries blending with the village's daily din. War simmers constantly, local lords feuding over land, crusades calling men to distant battles, leaving you to fend off raiders who pillage with impunity. Bandits lurk on roads, a wrong turn meaning robbery or worse, your meager possessions stripped in moments of terror. You clutch your hoe tighter on walks, a poor defense but better than nothing, heart pounding at every rustle in the bushes. The church square hosts executions, hangings, or beheadings, drawing families like a morbid picnic, cheers rising as the noose tightens or blade falls. You stand at the edge, stomach churning, but attendance is expected. Skip it, and suspicion falls on you. Poaching a deer? Hanged. Heresy? Burned alive. Flames licking as prayers rise with the smoke. Violence binds society, a glue of fear that keeps order through terror. No prisons for long term. Quick, brutal ends suffice. Modern aside, we'd film it for true crime shows. Here, it's live entertainment, no popcorn, but plenty of moral lessons. A light joke. Medieval conflict resolution? Skip therapy. Go straight to trial by who swings harder. Efficient, if a bit messy. Street brawls erupt over trifles. A bumped shoulder at market, a disputed pig. And you dodge flying fists, the air thick with grunts and curses. Nobles aren't immune. Their horse tramples your crop, and complaining earns a lash from their retinue. Hierarchy enforcing with steel. Feuds span generations. Blood debts repaid in ambushes that leave families shattered. You recall a cousin lost to a tavern fight, knife flashing over dice. His absence a hole in the hut's rhythm. Historians still argue whether this pervasive violence fostered community resilience or perpetuated cycles of trauma, with some analyzing coroners' rolls showing homicide rates far higher than today's urban averages. You press on, avoiding eye contact with the smith, whose hammer could double as a club, tension humming like bees in summer. Raids from outsiders, Vikings in the north, bandits everywhere. Keep villages vigilant. Watch fires burning through nights. Your sleep broken by alarms that send you grabbing pitchforks. A fringe fact. Some towns used hue and cry, where victims shouted to rally pursuers, turning chases into mob justice that often ended in lynching without trial. Community policing with a vengeance twist. You huddle during storms, fearing not just weather, but marauders using cover to strike. Another light joke. If violence were currency, you'd be rich. Just spend it wisely, or end up bankrupt in a ditch. As dusk falls, you hurry home, paths empty but for lurking shadows, the hut's door barred against the night's threats. Family clusters close, stories whispered of past skirmishes, a lullaby of caution. Modern sarcasm. We'd call the cops. Here, you are the cops, judge, and executioner, all in one exhausted package. Violence shapes your world, a constant hum beneath the bells and labors, survival meaning navigate or perish in its grip. The fire crackles low, warmth a brief shield, and you settle in, ears alert for knocks or shouts. Sleep comes warily, dreams laced with clashes, but dawn demands you rise. Dodging the day's dangers anew, you bar the hut's door against the night's lurking threats, the echoes of village brawls fading into a restless quiet. But sleep offers no escape when death hovers like an uninvited guest, its shadow cast long by the dim glow of embers. The straw beneath you crackles as you shift, each ache in your body, from the day's labor, that nagging tooth, the itch of your tunic, a reminder that life in this era is a fragile thread, easily snipped by disease, hunger, or sheer bad luck. The air feels heavy, thick with the musty scent of damp wood and the faint sourness of unwashed bodies. And you lie awake, pondering not if but when the end might come. At barely 25, you're already halfway through the average lifespan, a grim milestone in a world where reaching 40 makes you a village legend, whispered about as the old one, with a mix of awe and pity. Death is no stranger here, its presence woven into daily rhythms like the church bell's toll. Children perish before their 5th year, half claimed by fevers, malnutrition, or winters that turn small bodies cold on the straw. You recall a sibling lost to a cough that wouldn't quit, their tiny frame wasting away as prayers fail to hold them. Mainstream fact: medieval life expectancy averaged around 30-35 years, heavily skewed by infant mortality rates as high as 40-50%, as evidenced by parish records and cemetery excavations across Europe. Adults fare little better. Your joints creak like old gates, worn from endless toil, and a simple cut from a rusty sickle can fester into a fever that ends you in days. No antibiotics, no hospitals, just herbs and hope, neither reliable when sepsis sets in. Swelling limbs and clouding minds until breath stops. Famine stalks closer in lean years, harvests failing when rains drown seeds, or drought cracks the earth like broken pottery. You've seen winters where the granaries near empty, pottage thin to water and grit, bellies hollow as the wind howling through the hut's gaps. Starvation doesn't just kill, it weakens, inviting disease to finish the job, your body too frail to fight off the chills that turn into pneumonia. A quirky tidbit: some desperate souls ate famine foods, like boiled grass or tree bark, with records noting cases of people grinding acorns into meal, only to suffer poisoning from tannins that twisted guts and fogged minds. You chew your lip, remembering last year's meager yield, the gnawing hunger that made you eye the rats with dangerous thoughts. Modern aside, we'd order takeout or hit a food bank. Here, it's scavenge or starve, with no delivery apps to save the day. Disease is the silent reaper, striking without warning. Plagues that empty villages, fevers from tainted water, infections from wounds as small as a splinter. The Black Death looms in the future, but smaller pestilences already sweep through, leaving graves filled faster than priests can bless them. A neighbor's cough, or a rash like the one itching your arm, could signal doom. No doctor to diagnose beyond a healer's guess at bad humors. Childbirth, for women, is a deadly gauntlet, a callback to the perils of gender. Hemorrhages or infections claiming mothers as often as babes, straw beds stained with final struggles. Men face their risks: a fall from a cart, a bandit's blade on the road, a drunken brawl over dice. You've seen men limp back from crusades, missing limbs or minds, their tales of glory overshadowed by scars. Accidents abound in this unforgiving world. A misstep in the field snaps an ankle. A spark from the hearth ignites the thatch. A stumble into the river means drowning or chills that kill. Bandits haunt paths, their knives quick to claim coin or life, while lords' wars pull men away, leaving families defenseless against raiders who burn and take without mercy. You clutch your cloak, recalling tales of whole villages raised in feuds, No one spared, not even the chickens. Historians still argue whether high mortality rates drove resilience or despair, with some pointing to chronicles that show communities rebuilding after plagues, others noting widespread fatalism in art and sermons that preached life's brevity. A light joke. Medieval life's like a board game with one rule: roll low, and you're out. No extra lives included. Funerals are swift. No time for elaborate rites when disease demands quick burial to halt its spread. A shallow grave in the churchyard, a mumbled prayer, a wooden cross if you're lucky. Embalmings for nobles, not you. Bodies pile up in bad years, mass pits swallowing the unnamed, their stories lost to the earth's cold embrace. You've dug such graves, dirt caking under nails, the weight of loss heavier than the shovel. A fringe fact: some believed burying a coin with the dead paid a soul toll to ease their passage to heaven. Superstition. But it gave mourners something to cling to when hope was scarce. Modern sarcasm. We'd light candles on social media. Here, it's toss dirt and pray the ground takes the sickness with it. Death's shadow shapes every choice. Work harder, pray louder, eat what's offered. Because tomorrow isn't promised. You glance at your family, their faces soft in sleep, and wonder who'll be next. The thought a cold stone in your chest. Another light joke. If death knocks, he's got bad timing. Always showing up mid-harvest or right after you finally patch the roof. Sleep tugs, but it's uneasy. Dreams flickering with empty fields or silent huts. The reaper's footsteps, a quiet drumbeat in the night's hush. You curl tighter, straw pricking through your tunic, and let exhaustion pull you under. The ache in your bones, a reminder that life's a race against an early end. Each day a small victory stolen from death's grip. You wake to the faint clatter of the village stirring, the spectre of death's nearness lingering like a chill that won't shake off. But the bells call you to rise, their peal cutting through the dawn's haze like a reminder that time waits for no one, not even the weary. The straw beneath you is damp from night's dew seeping through the roof, its musty scent blending with the faint smoke of a rekindled fire. But your thoughts drift far from this muddy hamlet to a distant court where a young woman named Sophie steps into a world of ice and ambition. It's 1744, and you're no longer a peasant toiling in medieval fields. You're in St. Petersburg, witnessing Sophie Augusta's transformation into Catherine, a German princess destined to become Russia's iron-willed empress. The air here is sharp with frost and intrigue. The palace's gilded halls a stark contrast to your hut's dirt walls, yet danger lurks just as fiercely. Not in plagues or hunger, but in whispers, plots, and the precarious dance of power. You see Sophie, barely 14, arriving in Russia's frozen capital. Her thin dress no match for the biting wind, her diplomatic smile masking a mind already sharpening like a blade. She's summoned by Empress Elizabeth to wed Grand Duke Peter, heir to the throne, a match meant to secure alliances, but not her heart. Mainstream fact: Catherine, born Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst in 1729, was chosen for her noble blood and pliable demeanor, with her conversion to Orthodoxy in 1744, taking the name Ekaterina Alexeyevna, cementing her place in Russia's court, as detailed in imperial records. You watch her kneel in the ornate cathedral, renouncing Lutheranism for Orthodoxy, her voice steady, Despite the weight of abandoning her past, the ceremony's fur-lined robes drape her slight frame, incense curling like secrets in the air. But her eyes gleam with something fiercer than faith. Ambition, a spark that could ignite an empire or burn her to ash. Her marriage to Peter is a gilded cage, the Grand Duke, a petulant boy obsessed with toy soldiers, and Prussia, not the Russian throne he's meant to inherit. You stand in the shadows of their wedding, the hall glittering with candlelight and jewels, but Peter's disinterest is palpable. He barely glances at Sophie, his bride, now Catherine, her face composed but mind racing. She learns Russian swiftly, studies its history, and memorizes rituals, embracing her adopted land while Peter scorns it, dreaming of Berlin's courts. A quirky tidbit. Peter once staged mock battles with his servants in their chambers, using rats as enemies, while Catherine read Voltaire by candlelight. A bizarre contrast that fueled court gossip about their mismatched union. You see her navigate the viper's nest of courtiers, her letters opened, her maids spies, every word weighed for betrayal. Modern aside, we'd post cryptic tweets about toxic in-laws. She penned coded letters, her charm a shield against a court itching to see her fail. The palace hums with intrigue, Empress Elizabeth's health waning, and Catherine watches, waits, builds alliances with a smile that disarms generals and scholars alike. Her husband's childish tantrums, insulting Russian traditions, praising enemy Prussia, alienate nobles, while she cultivates loyalty, her dignity a quiet rebellion against his chaos. You catch her reading Montesquieu in secret, her mind alight with ideas of enlightened rule, though survival demands she play the dutiful wife for now. Historians still argue whether her early years were driven by genuine reformist zeal or calculated survival, with her memoirs hinting at both idealism and pragmatism as she navigated a court where one misstep meant exile or worse. A light joke. If Catherine had a diary app, it'd be password protected with "Don't trust Peter" as the hint, because even her quill knew better than to spill secrets. In 1762, the moment breaks. Elizabeth dies. Peter ascends as Tsar, and his reign unravels faster than a dropped spool. You're there as he offends the church, alienates the army, and talks of divorcing Catherine, his blunders piling like kindling. She seizes her chance, a coup orchestrated with breathtaking precision, supported by lover Grigory Orlov and his brothers. She rides through St. Petersburg, proclaimed Empress Catherine II by the Imperial Guard. Peter, caught off guard, surrenders, and soon dies mysteriously, officially colic, whispered murder. You see her in regal attire, astride a horse, her face resolute, claiming a throne not by birth, but by will. A fringe fact, her coup was bloodless, a rarity, with guards won over by promises of reform, and her charisma, though some whispered she bribed them with vodka and gold, classic Russian flair. Her crown secured, Catherine's real work begins, not just ruling, but remaking Russia. You watch her pen decrees, her desk piled with reports, her vision bold but cautious, balancing Enlightenment ideals with noble loyalty. She corresponds with Voltaire, founds schools, and dreams of laws that ease torture, but serfdom persists, a compromise to keep power. Modern sarcasm. We'd blog about work-life balance. She juggled coups, lovers, and an empire without missing a beat. Another light joke. Her court's like a reality show. Alliances shift, drama brews, and someone's always plotting an elimination. But Catherine's the star who never gets voted off. As night falls over the palace, chandeliers dim, and you feel the weight of her ambition, a fire that outshines your village's embers. She's no saint, lovers, wars, serfs bound tighter. But her legacy burns bright, a woman reshaping a man's world. Sleep pulls at you now, the straws itch, fading, the bells silent. The past softens, its edges blurring like a dream. You're no longer in Russia's courts or medieval fields. You're here, now, wrapped in warmth, the hum of a fan lulling you deeper. History's weight lifts, leaving whispers of resilience. Peasants enduring, Catherine rising, each carving meaning from struggle. Let the day's burdens dissolve, the world quieting as stars take watch. Drift gently, carried by stories that remind you, even in hardship, humanity finds light, stubborn and unyielding. Rest now. The past is a soft echo, guiding you to peace.